Buddha.
Two Spalding County parents are facing charges of child abuse and attempted murder after investigators say they locked their 10-year-old child in a bedroom for days with no food and no water. 11 Alive's Cody Alcorn is live for us this evening in Griffin. And Cody, we understand there were several other children living in that same home.
Yeah, Jennifer, we learned that there were 5 kids actually living in this 2-story home here behind me on Westminster Circle. There's the 10-year-old, which police say has been severely abused for years, but just moments ago, a neighbor told me there was a 14-year-old living here who they have not seen since January. During a news conference this afternoon, police would not directly talk about the possibility of that missing child, but said their investigation is still underway and it's very early in the process. What they did describe was horrific abuse to the 10-year-old boy living with the Shinleys. Warrants state not only did Krista and Tyler Shinley put old bruises and new marks on this child, but they say this kid only weighed 36 pounds. They say the couple was starving this child to death. On Friday, somehow the 10-year-old managed to escape and was found by a neighbor saying he was hungry and begging not to be taken back home.
We aren't releasing any photos of this child for obvious reasons, but I will tell you the photos are absolutely horrible. And anyone with a human heart that looks at them should be shaken to their core.
It is a heartbreaking case how anyone could do this to a child. Now, coming up at 11, I talked to a neighbor. I'm actually standing in their yard right now. They had a very bizarre run-in with this couple and this child that is missing right after that major tornado hit this area back in January. Wait till you hear what they said and why they think something more sinister may have happened inside this home here behind me.
Tonight, neighbors reacting to allegations that the child was locked away for days at a time with no food or no water. Krista and Tyler Shinley are now facing a slew of charges in connection to the years of alleged abuse, including attempted murder.
11 Alive's Cody Alcorn has been in Griffin all day long. He's live right there outside the home where police say all this abuse allegedly happened. So, Cody, neighbors have been in disbelief, right?
Yeah, complete shock. Some even feeling a little guilt because they didn't see this. Now, what I do want to tell you, just in the last 15 minutes, we saw the Shinley's oldest son pull out of this driveway right here. We saw him load several animals and even brought out some items, box-like things covered in blankets from inside the home and put them in his trunk. He did pull off. I asked him if he had any comment, but he ignored me. I will tell you, though, neighbors believe there may be even more secrets hidden behind these 4 walls.
I can't even.
Kim Siegler lives next door to Krista and Tyler Shinley, parents accused of trying to kill their 10-year-old child.
I can't explain to you how shocked we were, okay? I've really been affected by this.
A case so bad, the district attorney getting emotional during a news conference announcing the arrest on Tuesday.
This case is disturbing. It's heartbreaking. I have tried many child abuse cases in my career, and this child was simply put being starved to death.
On Friday morning, Siegler says her neighbor saw a small boy walking in the road barefoot.
She was thinking that was kind of odd.
More than odd, the little guy was starving. The neighbor ran out, scooped him up, and called 911. Police say he begged them not to take him back home.
To give you some context, I have a 9-year-old, and she currently weighs 76 pounds. This 10-year-old little boy weighed 36.
Warrants allege the child was locked away for days at a time over several years with no food, water, toilet paper, or even light. And while I was talking to Siegler next door about the abuse, she mentioned this.
Then they had a teenage son that we have not seen since January. I mean, he's only 14.
She says the last time they saw him was a couple days after an EF3 tornado hit their neighborhood, knocking out power for weeks. He asked to use their phone to call his parents.
He said, "Sure you can, what's wrong?" And he said, "Oh, well, they're on a cruise and I can't, they don't know that I'm okay." And he'd been over there the whole week.
Siegler says when the couple returned from their cruise, she saw them leaving the next night with their camper. As for the young man,
Have not seen him since.
now we did ask Griffin police and the district attorney if in fact this child is missing tonight. They didn't comment, saying their investigation is still ongoing. As far as that 10-year-old, he was stabilized here in Griffin and flown to a secure hospital where he is receiving treatment tonight. We're told in total there were 5 kids living in this house.
Now, this Griffin couple is waking up in jail after authorities say they nearly starved their 10-year-old to death. Krista and Tyler Schindley are facing a list of charges.
And this morning, we are hearing from neighbors who are in complete disbelief this was happening. Ariana Manish joining us live this morning after digging into the warrants and hearing from those people who can't believe this was happening in their neighborhood.
Yeah, Aisha, neighbors that we spoke to say they're shocked, some feeling a little guilty that they weren't aware of what was happening to this young child. One neighbor that we spoke to says, looking back, there were some red flags.
Parents Tyler and Chrissy Schindley are accused of attempting malice murder, first-degree cruelty to children, and allegedly intentionally withholding food from their 10-year-old child. Arrest warrant alleged the child was locked away for days at a time over several years with no food, water, toilet paper, or even light.
This case is disturbing. It's heartbreaking. I have tried many child abuse cases in my career, and this child was simply put being starved to death.
These charges come after a neighbor spotted the child walking in the road barefoot last Friday. Kim Siegler lives next door to the family, says the boy was looking for food.
She was thinking that was kind of odd.
The neighbor called 911. Police say he begged them not to take him back home.
I can't explain to you how shocked we were, okay?
The child was described as very small and very thin, weighing 36 pounds.
Give you some context, I have a 9-year-old and she currently weighs 76 pounds. This 10-year-old little boy weighed 36.
And Siegler says she regrets not paying closer attention to what was happening steps away from her front door.
I've really been affected by this.
Now, there were other children in this home, but those charges are only connected to the alleged mistreatment of the 10-year-old. Now, those other children, they are being interviewed by officials, and they're also in the custody of DFACS.
All right. My name is Investigator Powell. I work for the City of Griffin Police Department. I'm the Public Information Officer. We appreciate everyone coming today and your interest in this matter. We wanted to have a press conference in order to get everything clear and concise released at the same time and give a complete news release. The reason the charges appeared in reference to this with the murder is a computer autofill glitch. Murder was never charged. There was just criminal attempt to do so. That being said, I'm going to bring up my partner to speak on the case.
Hey there, I'm Investigator Spears. I'm with the City of Griffin Police Department. I'm lead investigator on this case. I'm gonna give you a little bit of information that I have. This case still is active and ongoing, so information is limited. On May 12th, morning hours, officers responded to the 1700 block of Westminster Circle in reference to a lost child. The call came from neighbors in the area who noticed the very small child walking down the street. They made contact with the child. He stated he was walking to the store to get some food. The neighbors asked him if he was okay, and he stated that he was hungry. Officers arrived and spoke to the child. The child asked the officers to please not make him go back. Officers noted that the child seemed very small, very thin. His skin was discolored. So the child was then transported to local hospital where he was being treated and is being treated for malnutrition and a very low heart rate. The child was discovered to be 10 years old, and at the time he was taken to the hospital, he only weighed 36 pounds. Like I said, this is really early in this case. The investigation is active and ongoing. However, I can let you know that the parents, Tyler and Krista Schindley, have been arrested and have been charged with the following charges: attempted murder homicide in the second degree, attempted malice murder, cruelty to children in the first degree, cruelty to children in the second degree, cruelty to children in the third degree, battery, simple battery, and false imprisonment. This is our district attorney, Marie Broder.
Thank you, Investigator Spears. Good afternoon. I understand and was briefly addressed at the beginning that there was some confusion as to the charges because of how they were listed on the sheriff's website. It's an interesting note that in the state of Georgia, we don't have attempted murder under that statute. You have to charge the criminal attempt to commit a felony, that felony being murder. And I believe the intention is to release the warrants to you so you can see how that is charged. The child is still alive. When he reported to the hospital, as was briefly mentioned, his heart rate was extremely low. He was extremely malnourished, and they had to stabilize him here at Spalding. He has then been transferred to another hospital where he is receiving treatment. As you all know, and being a child prosecutor for most of my career, child abuse cases are record heavy and record intensive. We have requested everything that we can. We have obviously records we need to retrieve from the hospital. We have records that we need to retrieve from defects if there are any. We have cell phones that have to be looked into. So we are actively investigating this case, and we are getting all the information that we can. So what we have right now is limited, but I can tell you that the child is stable as of now.
Is the child the intended murder victim?
Yes. The state alleges in the warrants, and it is my office's decision to move forward on the criminal attempt for malice murder for starvation. The child was being starved to death is what we will argue.
How long do you believe the child was deprived of food?
The child has not even been interviewed yet to get a firm timeline, to just be candid, so I don't want to go into that specific. But when he is released, we will have a full forensic interview with him, and we'll be able to know more about those details.
Can you say how the child managed to get away?
The child somehow escaped, and he was walking the street trying to get to Kroger to get food when some individuals that lived in the area found him, and very good people that they are, brought him in and got him some water and some crackers and reported it to police, and we're very thankful to them. What I will say is this case is disturbing. It's heartbreaking. I have tried many child abuse cases in my career, and this child was simply put being starved to death. And it is tragic. To give you some context, I have a 9-year-old, and she currently weighs 76 pounds. This 10-year-old little boy weighed 36.
Do you believe the doors were locked?
Hang on, y'all. I'm so sorry. Let me go with you first, and then Ms. Matthews, I'll go to you. And then Ms. Gunnels to you.
Do you believe the doors were locked, or how was the child being kept in the home?
We do have evidence of confinement, but I don't want to go into too many details about that. But there is evidence to support the idea that the child was confined, yes. And I believe there is a warrant for false imprisonment. That would give you a little bit more detail on that. Yes, ma'am.
I've received information that the Shinleys left this child home alone while they vacationed to include trips to Disney and a cruise. Can you confirm that?
I cannot confirm that. I have not listened to their interviews yet, so that's not something that I can confirm.
Was the child left home following alone with an older sibling after the tornado?
I can't confirm that yet. I'm sorry, Ms. Matthews, I cannot. I wasn't present for the interviews, and I haven't listened to them yet.
How many children did they have?
There are multiple children in the home. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask that, if there are multiple children in the home.
I can't give any obvious detail about the children. Actually, their DFACS is working with them now, so I honestly don't know the status. But they are also in line to be interviewed.
The number of children? There were 5.
5.
Including the main victim.
Are these children, I know on the warrant it doesn't say a son, so are these foster kids, were these their kids? I know you can't give a lot, but I mean, was this 10-year-old a child?
No, we can't comment on that at this time. It would go into protected records, and I can't comment on that at this time.
Is there a child missing? I'm being told a 14-year-old that hadn't been seen.
I'm not sure about that, honestly. I know that we are still looking into the family history, extensively looking into the family history, and I know that the investigators have been working on identifying potentially some other children, but I don't know enough to comment about that at this time.
Is there any defects history there?
We are looking into that. Obviously, we would have to request those records.
What is the help of the other children that are in the home now?
I can't comment on their health.
Are the parents foster parents? Are they foster?
No, they're not. I can tell you they're not foster parents, no. What did you ask me? I'm sorry.
What is the condition of the boy's name?
He's stable. He's stable, but he's still receiving medical treatment in a hospital.
Is he in ICU?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
As you like you being a mom, I mean, how hard is this case knowing that, you know, this kid for 3 or 4 years was getting abused like this under everybody's noses? I mean, obviously you wouldn't know, but I mean, to know this kid was going through this for that long, I mean, to be that little when he's found.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, as a mother, I can't comprehend it, but as a human being, it breaks your heart. We aren't releasing any photos of this child for obvious reasons, but I will tell you the photos are absolutely horrible. And anyone with a human heart that looks at them should be shaken to their core. I certainly was.
I know starvation's bad enough, but were they physically beating the child as well?
I don't have the medical records yet. That's something that we're waiting. We don't have that charged because we're waiting on medical records to determine
Do
that.
you believe food was withheld from the other children, or why this particular boy?
We have not been able to interview the other children yet, so we don't know. But as of now, no other charges are. The parents aren't facing any other charges for any withholding of food from the other children right now.
Can you speak more to the conditions of how this child was being kept? Was deprived of water or light or?
That would get into records that we would be having to protect at this time. So I'm not going to go into any more detail about that. I can just tell you he was confined.
What condition was the home in?
I mean, the home itself was okay. I mean, but I don't want to get into too much detail about that. But the home itself was okay, but there's a lot more to that will come out as the case unfolds.
Well, I'm wondering, is there like food rationing, locks on the cabinets, anything like that?
And I know y'all are wanting answers to these questions, but understand that not only is my role as district attorney, but because this is a case involving child abuse, there's just very little talking about the specifics that I can give you.
Have there been any calls out to this house before?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Can you answer where they were arrested, the parents?
Let me turn it over to Investigator Spears. I don't know the answer to that question.
Both parents the father voluntarily came to the police department to talk to us once we had gotten notified of this incident. He was arrested and taken into custody at the police department. And the mother was transported as well to the police department. Once we interviewed her, she was arrested and taken into custody from the police department.
And when was that? When was that?
May the 12th, on Friday.
The same day?
Yes, ma'am.
And part of this investigation, are you looking into see how this even was allowed to happen? Were people not checking on this? I mean, it's hard to imagine how this could continue this long and nobody came forward.
I agree with you. We're looking into that, interviewing neighbors, that kind of thing, trying to find how that happened.
I mean, were they being schooled in any kind of way?
The children were homeschooled.
What was the length of time of confinement?
We're not sure at this time.
We've heard this reporter say this was 3 or 4 years. Is that what you're going with?
I'm not sure at this time. I can't answer that.
And part of, I'll stand with her on this, part of it is because we still have to forensically interview these children to narrow down the timeline. So understand that the child has been in a hospital, so we haven't been able to forensically interview him yet. As soon as we do, we'll be able to answer more of the timeline.
Have the parents made any statements to explain what this is all about?
We have spoken to the parents. We have interviewed them, but I can't discuss what they've disclosed at this time.
But this is their 10-year-old son.
This is their child, yes, ma'am.
Any reason why this particular child was being starved?
We're trying to figure that out. We're not sure at this time.
Did the quarantine relative to the pandemic help these parents to conceal this child?
That was a statement that was provided to us. That's a possibility. Yes, ma'am.
So what's next? Like, you'll gather records from medical records, everything there, and then what's next?
We'll do forensic interviews on all children, and then once we have those, further contact with schools, possibly that the children had previously attended before homeschool, neighbors, other family members, just trying to reach out and get a broad dynamic of how this family was, and when maybe a change was seen, possibly.
Can you give us a range on the children's ages, the youngest and the oldest?
No, ma'am, I can't.
But there were some younger than this 10-year-old.
Yes.
Is there potential for more victims that you guys might not know about out there with this family's history without even too much away? I mean, is there?
I feel it could be possible, but I can't say either way.
Ms. Brody, you know when they'll make the first court appearance?
They had one yesterday, I believe. And then we would expect to have a bond hearing probably in the next upcoming weeks. And to answer somebody asked a question, I'm sorry, I can't recall who it was, about what's next. A lot of paper for these investigators, a lot of work, a lot of interviews. In child abuse cases, we need pediatric records, we need school records, we need defects records, we need interviews with everybody that had any contact with this child, if there are other people that had contact with him. And they are right now doing all of that work. And I appreciate them for what they have done. It is my true belief that had he not gotten out of the home, that this case would be a very different one.
The other children, are they in the custody of the state at this point?
I do not know.
Who's watching them,
And that's a defects matter, so I don't know.
How does this work if a kid gets back? Which, I mean, with this abuse, do you guys have some agent that comes in that specializes in interviewing this child? I mean, not saying you guys can't, but I know it's probably unique for you guys.
Sure. Well, anytime there's an allegation of child abuse, it's a good question. We reach out to a facility that has trained people that interview children of trauma, that be physical trauma, emotional trauma, or sexual abuse. And those forensic interviewers are specifically trained for this very thing. And so that's who we'll use in this case as well.
Do you think this child was on a 5th grade level, or cognitively was he behind as well?
I don't know. So that'll be something hopefully we'll find in the records that we've requested. All right. Thank you all for your interest. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I think that's all we have.